Hello, my name is Merrick, and this is Review Corner. Ooh.
Oh my, who's gonna take it back to the past? Oh my, to play the shitty games that suck ass. Oh my.
Today, for my second episode, I am reviewing Chocolate and Cheese by Ween. Ween is one of my favorite bands. It's been one of my favorite bands for a little while now, just because of how, totally insane they are. The genre hopping on all of their albums, going from Chocolate and Cheese to an entire country album. And also, there's metal influences in there, and psychedelica, and just so much. So, Chocolate and Cheese came out September 27th, 1994, by Elektra Records. It was their first professionally produced album, the two before this being The Pod and Pure Guava. And both of those were recorded in their homes, and all they had, it's Dean and Jean Ween. Those are their stage names. Totally forgot their real names. But Dean and Jean Ween, they're the original two that came up with this when they were 14 years old. And the two of them, guitars, and then these little cassette, Porta Studio things. And that was their drum machine. And that's purely what Pure Guava and The Pod were made out of. But when they signed with Elektra Records, they were with Andrew Weiss, who was their producer. Some of their singles that they had on this, well, all three of them, were Voodoo Lady, I Can't Put My Finger on It, and Freedom of 76. All very good songs. So, before this album, like I said, it was just Dean and Jean Ween. But when they got signed on to Elektra Records, they got a drummer. So they brought on Claude Coleman Jr., who is a drummer. And they didn't really have to rely on cassette tapes, drum sets anymore. They had a live drummer. And the other difference between The Pod and Pure Guava and Chocolate and Cheese is that Chocolate and Cheese was produced electronically, while everything else that they had done before that at this point was all tapes. So it gave a definite different feel. It was a lot more hi-fi than lo-fi from what they had been doing before. So a little bit about this album is Ween has, their albums are all dedicated to one person, and this one is dedicated to John Candy. And in a Rolling Stones interview, Gene was asked why it was dedicated to John Candy, and it's because John Candy had died around the same time as Kurt Cobain, and it had been totally overshadowed. And John Candy was a comedian. He was a big comedian. And Gene Ween was a big fan of John Candy, so he thought it was appropriate to name it after him because it came out around the same time that he had died, and he really loved him. I know some of the other songs, like A Tear for Eddie, was dedicated to another person who I forget. I'm sorry. Looking at the reviews for this, it's very highly acclaimed by most reviewers that I've seen. Pitchfork gave it a 9. The lowest that I saw was from New Musical Express, which gave it a 6 out of 10, which I think is kind of crazy. I didn't really read the review that hard, but I don't think they really understood what Ween was trying to do with this. Like I said before, Ween is very much genre hopping, both in their albums and in general. You can go from metal on one song to just a really sad, beautiful ballad type of piece to their country album, where one of their songs on there is Piss Up a Rope, and it's very much energetic, energetic country. And then another song on there is I'm Holding You, and that's a very slow and beautiful piece. But one of the biggest songs that's come out of Chocolate and Cheese was Baby Bitch. That was about his ex-girlfriend, who he had written about before. He wrote a song called Birthday Boy, and that's mentioned in the song. But yeah, so Baby Bitch is the biggest song off of here. And then of course there's Voodoo Lady, which I think is the next biggest song that came out of this. But so my personal review of this album is a 9 out of 10. It is one of my favorite albums of all time, top 10. And Ween is one of my top 10 favorite artists of all time. My favorite song off of here is probably Spinal Meningitis Got Me Down, and it's about having spinal meningitis as a kid, and really weird. A lot of their songs are just really weird, you know, but in a really fun and interesting way that kind of keeps you hooked. The reason I don't give it a 10 out of 10 is, like I said last video, I think you can always, like, we're humans, right? Humans are perfect, so I don't think we can make perfect music, but that's kind of what makes it perfect, you know? There's one or two songs that I do skip on here. Buenos Tardes Amigos, I don't really like that song. I don't listen to it a lot. And I think the song is called Just Candy, and I think that's the one that's purely dedicated to John Candy, but it goes like, Candy, Candy, and it gets really repetitive in my head, and I try not to listen to it. But 9 out of 10, truly such an enjoyable album. And I think the reason that it got a 6 out of 10 from New Musical Express, which is a British review kind of organization, is because when you give Ween the first listen outside of like Ocean Man, I think it can be a little jarring, some of their songs, because they're out there. They're really out there, some of them. But you can really tell the genius behind it after giving it a few listens. When I first started getting into Ween, I didn't like this album. I didn't really like their music that much. I thought it was like, this is whack, man. What are they fucking talking about? You know, what's happening? Why are we singing about spinal meningitis? All right? Why are we pissing up a rope? What are flutes of chi? You know? It really grabs a hold onto you. These weird rhythms and these crazy genre hops, they just start to make sense. So I truly think everyone needs to give Ween a better chance than just Ocean Man. That album's also really good. This is my review of Ween. I gave it a 9 out of 10, and it's a really interesting listen, as most Ween is. Okay, thanks for coming into my little review corner today. Let's go. I'll see you later.